What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Eclectic Collector channel. It's been a while since the last video that I recorded for this channel. I've been kind of busy. Also, I've been playing the Elden Ring DLC, so that's consumed a little bit of my time as well. But I'm really excited about this. It's been a while since I did, and I've been reading video, and this is one that I've been talking about doing for a while now, and this is I've been reading Death Game Manga. I've got 5 volumes of manga. 2 of them I've read to completion, and the other 3 I've read halfway. Typically when I do these, I like to read halfway through the volume of manga. But one of them I took with me. I went on a trip to Michigan, and I took one of the volumes with me to Michigan, and I just could not put it down, so I ended up just pouring through the whole thing. But yeah, we're gonna talk about it all today, and I'm going to give you my opinions about each one, and then from there I'll kind of give you like a recommendation based on which one I enjoyed the most. So we'll jump right into it, and yeah, if you've read any of these, I'd love to know what you think, or if you've read all 5 of them, or if you've read all 5 of these, I would love to know what your opinion is on any one of them. So here we go. These are the volumes of manga that we will be talking about today. Alright, so first up on this video that we're doing today, I want to talk about what I consider to be a classic series, and this duo that made Deadman Wonderland, Jinsei Kataoka and Kazuma Kondo. These 2 creators also wrote a series called Smokin' Parade, which I think was like 10 volumes, if I'm not mistaken. I have all 10 volumes of that series. I reviewed the first volume in a currently reading video, or a hey, have you read video? I can't remember which one of the 2. But these 2 creators have a super duper unique sort of a style when it comes to telling a story, and they are not afraid to get bloody and gory. So yeah, this is one of those situations. Like, this came out in, I want to say, like the mid 2000s, and I remember watching the anime for this series a lifetime ago. I think like 2013, 2014, I'd seen the anime for Deadman Wonderland. And one thing about the anime, which I don't know if I'll be able to show you anything from the anime, because like YouTube is really weird, or at least the copyright holders or whatever don't really like when I show anime. A lot of the times when I show anime on this channel, I get a region lock or whatever, and like I can't show my video at all. But maybe I'll just show screens. But with the anime, like, it's like really dark. I don't know if any of you have seen it, and I don't mean dark in like the oh, man, that's so brutal sense. I mean just like it's like dark, like they turned the contrast all the way up in like almost every other scene. And I remember watching like a fan translation of the anime, and like I thought it was maybe just a fan translation, but no, it's the anime is like, for whatever reason, like really dark, really hard to watch, and I feel like it is a product of its time. And this is a manga, and much like the other manga that I'm going to be talking about, a lot of it is, kind of in a certain span of time, place, like in a certain place, like the mid 2000s, I feel like were one of the edgiest periods of time. We got things like Gantz, we got this right here, Deadman Wonderland, Hellsing, Elfen Lied, Gungrave. We just got all this stuff, dude, that was so edgy. It was so edgy, but it was like, it was that span of time, where everything just wanted to be edgier than the last. And this, for me, Deadman Wonderland, kind of fit that mold, where it just wanted to be edgy as all hell. And the story of Deadman Wonderland is that it takes place in 2023 after this event called the Great Tokyo Earthquake. And in this story verse, there ends up, I guess, being a super like a super max prison, like that cartoon Super Jail. I don't know if any of you like remember Super Jail or not, but that's kind of what this reminds me of, is like Super Jail. But pretty much this kid right here, Ganta, and this girl right here named Shido, are in this super max prison that is also like an amusement park. Like the two of them, participate in like these death games. What ends up happening is, like, in this story verse, this dude right here, Ganta, is pretty much accused of killing a bunch of kids, including his two closest friends. And as a result of that happening, he ends up being sent to the Supermax prison, where he doesn't really know what he's getting himself into. He kind of just thinks that like he's in prison, and for the most part, like, he's been framed for this murder. And one thing that the anime does that this manga doesn't do is, like, it goes into like the trial, and it goes into the background of him being persecuted and thrown into prison. And this, it just kind of goes from like the incident that happens where like his friends die straight into him being in prison. And one thing that I liked is that there's like kind of like, I want to say, like a deep fake sort of a situation in the anime with Ganta, where like he's on screen saying that, like, just talking a bunch of trash. I forgot what he said specifically because I watched the anime like 10 years ago. But he's like talking a bunch of trash and saying that like he has no remorse, for the dead kids or whatever. And it kind of reminded me of, there's this film that maybe some of you won't remember, if you like, depending on how young you are. But there's this film that came out in like the late 90s, early 2000s that featured music by Marilyn Manson, called The Blair Witch Book of Shadows. And this is kind of a spoiler for that film, but I don't know if any of you are ever gonna watch it. It's an old movie. It's like a campy old movie now. But there's this scene where these characters are at this like castle or whatever, and they're trying to like find the Blair Witch. I forgot what the hell the situation is, but like they're streamers before streaming was what it is now with Kick, and all these streamers that are just out to outdo each other and just trying to be like the worst human being on the planet. But this is like before that, like there's like reality TV or whatever, and these guys just like, there's a bunch of people with cameras and everybody's filming everything. And it's like, it's funny now that I think about it, with how relevant it is to this world in which we live now. But they're in this house, and they're filming everything, and because of the fact that they're filming everything, this dude wants to have an alibi. There are these campers, or these hikers or whatever, that are kind of doing the same thing that like he's doing, which is like trying to get footage of the Blair Witch or whatever. It's been a long time, so I can't like fully remember what the actual premise of the story was, but I just remember they're like trying to get footage of whatever the hell. And these people that were also there for the same purpose, that were a part of a separate group, end up being murdered. And this dude and these other people that are trying to film this reality TV show or whatever the hell end up they end up getting killed. And the crew that he ends up going there to film this reality TV show or whatever with, they're accused of murdering these other people. And they roll the tapes, and you see on the tapes him and his people essentially killing this other group of people, and they kill him in like these really ritualistic sorts of ways. And he's just like, at the end of it, he's just like, stop the tape or whatever, and that's kind of what this made me think of a little bit too. It made me think of Blair Witch, Book of Shadows, like that whole scene, where it's like they're like deep faked or whatever, like before deep fake was even a thing. And yeah, like once he's in the prison, he ends up having to, he's forced, to participate in one of these death games because he has a candy. And like everybody that essentially ends up in this prison has a candy, and you have like 3 days to eat your candy, because if you don't eat your candy within 3 days, you will die. That collar that he's wearing right there, I'll blow it up or something. I'll put somewhere over here. I'll put like a better picture of it. But that collar that he's wearing around his neck, pretty much, it's slowly injecting you with poison. And if you don't consume basically a candy that works like an antidote, if you don't consume one within like 3 days, you are basically poisoned to death. And he ends up having to join a death game to win 100,000 cast points, or CP, which is what they're called in this world. And cast points kind of work like if any of you know anything about like prisons or whatever, you get a canteen. When you're a prisoner, you get a canteen, and you can pretty much put, I guess, if you have money in the real world, or if your family sends you money or whatever, that money goes into your canteen and you use that to buy cigarettes or, toiletries, whatever the hell, whatever you need while you're in prison. That's what that money essentially goes to. That's in your canteen. And that's kind of what CP or cast points are in this world, is pretty much like a canteen. And by participating in like death games or whatever, but he doesn't know yet that it is a death game. He just knows that it's a game that he's got to participate in to be able to afford this candy or whatever. And yeah, whoever wins $100,000, wins 100,000 cast points, and those 100,000 cast points are basically the price of a candy. Each candy is about 100,000 cast points. So he has to participate now. And then a bunch of other stuff happens. There's like this dude who's like a big bully or whatever. He's like in the prison, he's like, I guess like the big bad or whatever. And he ends up somehow like on the wrong side of that dude. But he's also like kind of a coward, as you can kind of see on the cover there, where he's like covering his head or whatever. He's kind of a coward. So he, bows down to the bully and kind of lets the guy, stomp on him, like literally stomp on him. And this girl calls him a coward or whatever. This girl had given him half of her sandwich, and then she takes half of her sandwich back, because like she's the one that kind of explains to him and, us, exposition. She kind of gives us, the exposition dump, a little bit of the prison, how like cast points are what you use to buy whatever you may need, if you're hungry or if you need, like I said, toiletries or whatever. But this one hasn't really, like, not much has happened yet. Like I saw the anime, so I got pretty much the whole run of the anime, which really doesn't cover that much of the manga. I think it maybe covers like the first 5 or 6 volumes of the manga. I'm not really 100% certain, so if you know, let me know in the comments what it actually covers. But I wouldn't be surprised if that's what it covers, like the first 5 or 6, volumes of the manga is maybe what's covered in the anime. But this covers enough that it does get to the death game, part of it. And he doesn't realize, like I'd said, like probably 4 or 5 times already, he doesn't realize that it is a death game until he's a part of it. And then he starts seeing people like get dropped into electrified water, and like they pretty much, are electrocuted to death in the water. Other guys get like arrows to the neck, and they're being shot at by giant chickens, by giant dudes in rubber chicken suits or whatever. And it's a wild read. And like I said, it's like super edgy, because of the time period in which it came out. And the warden is kind of a psychopath, but it's a lot of fun. I think it's a fun read if you're a fan of just, kind of unhinged, over the top, sort of like edgy, like I said, yeah, like mid 2000s sort of a storytelling. And there is this sort of being that's like the something egg, the forbidden egg or whatever the hell, kind of like an Evangelion sort of a situation going on there. But as it gets going, like you start to see more of this world, and it starts off like kind of like a death game sort of a situation. But then as it gets going, the world starts to open up a lot more. But it won't happen in this chapter. This chapter still has like the death game stuff kind of going on. But once it really gets going, it turns into like kind of like a tournament sort of a manga. Like the death game part is on the surface, but then it kind of turns into like it turns into more like a tournament thing where like these different sorts of inmates like basically fight each other to the death and whatnot, and it turns into like a completely different sort of a story. So I thought that was a pretty cool, just in the anime, pretty cool subversion of what this series is. And the artwork is killer, as you can tell here. I think Shido has a great design. The way he looks too is kind of cool. But yeah, I think her design overall, like I love the way that Shido is designed. I mean, her character is kind of like goofy or whatever. Like she's like almost like free spirited. Does like really like random antics or whatever. But overall, there's certain characters in here that like kind of seem like they're nice people, and then they reveal themselves to be anything but nice people. And sometimes it's that kind of a situation where like you really don't know who's around you, and just because somebody tries to like be cool with you doesn't necessarily mean that they're a good person. They're probably just trying to get something out of you. And yeah, I definitely recommend this one. Like I said, if you want something that's super mid 2000s in essence, death game, but then there's more going on beyond the death game sort of situation, kind of edgy or whatever. I think this will be a lot of fun and definitely worth checking out. All right, so next up we've got Doubt by Yoshiki Tonogai, and this is one that I wasn't super duper in love with. I'm halfway through this. Deadman Wonderland, I'd actually completely read the whole volume because it was a short volume. And I kind of already knew the story anyway, so it wasn't like a big deal. But Doubt, I did not know the story of Doubt. This same creator has also written 2 other series that I know of. One of them is called Dead Company, and the other one is called Judgment. And like I said, I haven't read either of those. I'm halfway through this one. So Doubt is kind of like a precursor to like Among Us, where these 6 characters right here, kind of play this, I want to say like a mobile game or whatever, where I don't know if it's one of them that will take turns, being, I guess, the killer or whatever, being the one who is sus. So yeah, they play this like mobile game called like Rabbit Doubt, and pretty much the premise of the game that these characters play is that there is, among this group of rabbits, there is a killer, which is a wolf, I guess, if you will. There's a wolf instead of like a wolf in sheep's clothing, it's a wolf in rabbit's clothing. And you pretty much, as the players of this game, have to figure out who the wolf is, and I guess, I don't know, take him out before he, kills everybody. So this one right here is like really slow to start, and it's not slow in a good way, because I'm gonna be talking about Kaiji in a little bit, and I feel like Kaiji is also, like, for the most part, like a really slow story, but that's more of like a slow burn, whereas this is just really slow, and it's like it takes a while to kind of get to the point, and I feel like there's a lot of wasted time in this thing, where like it could have jumped into it a lot sooner. I think a good example is another one that I'm also going to talk about, which is Tenku Shinpan, or High Rise Invasion. That one kind of drops you right into the world, and you're figuring out what's going on with the lead character, and I'll get into that, a little bit, and I'll get into that a little bit more. But I just wanted to use those as examples, where like this, for like the first 20-ish pages, I want to say, we spend time with these characters at a karaoke bar, and they just pretty much goof around, and they sing songs and whatnot, and I feel like it takes away from this tension you're supposed to be building, or like you have this cover here, and this cover is supposed to like make you think that this is going to be like a horror manga, but then it kind of meanders and kind of goofs around a little bit, and whatever tension you want to build, in my opinion, kind of goes out the window with, pretty much the characters doing karaoke and just goofing around or whatever. Doesn't really, help too much to build any sort of attention. And then by the time the moments that are, tense come, it doesn't really feel earned, because there was no real build up. There was no clear build up to it. It just suddenly like drops you into tension. And it just feels really random. It feels like it's 2 completely different stories. Like there's no balance there. And I'm not trying to hate on this creator, because I'm sure, maybe by over here, by the time I finish it or something, my opinion of it will change, and I'll enjoy it a lot more. I mean, I did buy the 2 volumes of it. It's only a 2-volume series. I own both volumes of it, because I planned on, trying to knock the whole thing out. But I'm not saying that I hate it. I don't hate it. I just think that it could have gone about the situation a little bit better. It's definitely another relic, of that mid 2000s. Only I don't think it's nearly it's not edgy in the way that like Deadman Wonderland is edgy. I feel like it doesn't really know what it's doing, or the ideas could have been a little bit better situated, because it uses the karaoke part to try to do some exposition, but I feel like you could do that exposition again, bringing back up Tenku Shinpan, where like the exposition is done on the run, like you're with this character on this roof, and you're getting the exposition as she traverses this sort of a thing. I feel like if they cut the hanging out the karaoke bar situation out, cut all that stuff out, and just drop them right into the room. And then they could talk about how they were sitting in a karaoke bar while they're exploring this facility, because that is what ends up happening. They end up in this facility at a later point in the manga. They end up in a facility, and one of the 6 characters, is dead in a sort of a Saw. I don't know if any of you have ever watched Saw, but there's like the dude on the floor in the first Saw, in the bathroom or whatever it is that they're in. And the 2 dudes are like going back and forth for the runtime, of the film, and the exposition is kind of built around them being in that room and how they got to be in that room. And it does have some ideas. This manga does have some ideas that make me have hope. Like I said, I didn't hate it. I don't hate it now. I just feel like the opening could have been better executed, but that's just an opinion. You know what I mean? These are my opinions. You don't have to agree with me. I don't think anybody has to agree with me. You can completely disagree with every word that comes out of my mouth. That's perfectly fine. We're all our own individual people. You know what I mean? We have our own opinions. We have our own thoughts about things, and I do like that there is a thing in this story where there are like barcodes. Like all the characters have a barcode. Even the person who dies, pretty early on, has a barcode, and you use these barcodes to open doors. And I'm pretty sure, like, once you use your barcode to open a door, like, that's it. Like, you can't use your barcode anymore. Only there's one character that doesn't have a barcode, and he doesn't want anybody to know that he doesn't have a barcode. But like I said kind of earlier on, like, they end up playing, I guess, like a real life rabbit doubt in this situation where like one of them's already dead, so there's a chance that another one of them might also die. So they're kind of like trying to explore this facility that it seems pretty clear whatever this space was kind of set up in a way where it would be used as a testing ground for these characters to do their whole situation or whatever, in the death game sort of a situation, like all these are, for the most part, death game manga. And in this situation, now that these characters are trapped in this place, one of them kind of goes crazy or whatever, and they end up locking him up. And I don't know, like, I feel like I do like that part of it, where when you put people in the tense, stressful situation, they'll either buckle under pressure or they'll kind of rise to the occasion. And one of the dudes kind of buckles under pressure, and then the other people kind of try to rise to the occasion and try to figure out how the hell to get, out of there. Kind of like an escape room, I guess, if you will. They're trying to find their way out before, more of their group is exterminated, and then they end up encountering another person there that didn't meet up with them when they were in the karaoke bar. For whatever reason, this reminded me of this film called Mindhunters, and not the TV show Mindhunter by David Fincher, but Mindhunters, which is a movie that came out in like the early 2000s or mid 2000s. I can't even remember when exactly it came out. But there's even a dude in a chair, like there's a girl in a wheelchair in this manga who is that girl right there, is a girl in a wheelchair in the manga. And Mindhunters is this film about this group of like these really elite sort of investigators or whatever, like the top of the top investigators. And for whatever reason, like this kind of reminded me of that, where like they're also in a place, they're also like in this I don't know, like I forgot what the hell it was, but like this facility, and little one by one they start getting picked off. All of these mind hunters, they start getting picked off, and then by the end of it you get the reveal of who was picking them off or whatever. But kind of does remind me of that a little bit. There is definitely a fascination, I think, in, I don't know if it's just Japan or what, but I guess we have escape rooms too, so there's like a fascination for a lot of people with being put into like these predicaments where it's like, how are you going to see yourself out of it? How are you going to escape? Like using your wits or whatever to get out of this sort of like tense situation. Maybe that's why there's like so many sorts of stories like this, or like Dead Company, or like Judgment or whatever. Also all by the same mangaka. And then you get like Kaiji and all these other situations where where like characters are kind of forced, to use the stronger part of themselves, or even like use their brains maybe more than they'd ever had in their lives to try to get out of these sorts of situations. And yeah, I'm like halfway through this thing. I don't hate it. Maybe I could end up really enjoying it by the end of it. I'm genuinely curious how the hell this dude has dragged 2 books out of this, because like, given that one character's already dead, I'm curious as to like, what's going to go on with the other characters and how the other characters are going to essentially like see themselves, out of this situation. So I think that is going to be an interesting sort of a thing. What if a creator can, get, just milk a story for everything that it's worth and get every little bit out, then hey, I applaud it. This thing is a big boy, you know what I mean? It's a nice, thick volume, and it's not terrible. I feel like it could have been a little bit better in the opening, but for the most part, like, I'm going to finish it, and then depending on how I feel about this one, I'll jump into volume 2, and then we'll knock out the story, and I'll find out, what's going on. And if any of you have read this, or if you've read Deadman Wonderland, or seen the anime for Deadman Wonderland, I'd love to know what you think. So let's move on to the next one. Alright, so next up, we have one that I've been really looking forward to talk about. This is High Rise Invasion, or as I like to refer to it, Denku Shinpan. So I've talked about this series a bunch on the channel. I have a personal history with Denku Shinpan, or High Rise Invasion, and the story for this manga is by Tsuina Miura, and the artwork is by Takahiro Oba. So this is a series that, as I've said before, I have a history with this manga, and I think I picked this up in my last haul video that I did, which was my March, April haul, if I'm not mistaken. I talked a little bit about the series, and yeah, this is one of those series that I'd read, I think I want to say in like 2015, and I read it online. This didn't get translated, I think, until like 2018. So I read like pretty much like fan translations or whatever of Denku Shinpan, and I really enjoyed it. I mean, this is one of those things where like it felt like a fever dream to me, and I've talked about this before, where like I wasn't sure that I'd actually read this, or I knew that I'd read it, but I couldn't remember, the name of it. I think I did remember it, just being Denku Shinpan, and that was it. And I tried to look it up and couldn't find it for the longest time. Like, I would type that name in to like my web browser or whatever, and could not pull it up. I could not find it for whatever. I could never find it. And then I saw the High Rise Invasion, anime being announced on like here in the US. It's Netflix. I'm sure somewhere else it's probably like Disney Plus or whatever, because it's different parts of the world, different services offer anime or whatever. And then I saw that it had like this line of volumes of manga that are released by Seven Seas, and I have the first 2 of these. I'm going to try to pick up the rest of them, because I think it's 5 altogether. That makes up, I guess, 10 volumes or something like that, if I'm not mistaken. I'll figure out how many it is, and I'll put the actual count or whatever, how many of these there are. But Denku Shinpan pretty much tells the story of this girl named Yuri, who basically wakes up one day on a rooftop, and she doesn't know how she got there. All she knows is that, she wants to try to find a way down from the roof, and she thinks about her, I guess, like, big brother or whatever, and wonders if he is also on the rooftops as well, or if she's up there by herself. And she ends up running into like this lady who was trying to essentially escape something, and when the lady turns around, there is this dude. I think he's wearing like overalls or whatever, and like a mask, much like that mask right there. She ends up finding, like, because everything is like fenced in, and she ends up finding like this ledge that isn't fenced in. And there's just like this look of relief on her face, on the lady's face, just before she vaults over the roof to the ground below, like 100 or so feet, or maybe more, below. And Yuri is essentially terrified. I don't know if I said already, but I read halfway through this volume. And Yuri is terrified by what she has just witnessed. But as the story goes, she starts to kind of see more, of what's going on, and starts to try to find a way to survive herself as she begins to be chased by these mask-wearing psychopaths that pretty much anybody like wearing a mask, much like this dude right here is wearing a mask, these people are essentially trying to kill anybody that they run into on the rooftops. So where I got to in this series is much further than this. Since I haven't, continued it, beyond that point right there, there's a certain character introduced that hasn't yet been introduced, and I'm kind of wondering if that character gets introduced in this first section, or if it'll be in the next volume, because whenever she gets introduced, that's about where I left off, where I stopped reading it. And I stopped reading it because I stopped working at this place where I was working. When I was reading the manga, I was working at a certain place, and then when I stopped working there, a lot of the things that I was involved in just kind of went to the wayside. And reading this series kind of, went to the wayside as well for whatever reason. But yeah, it's about the point where I kind of stopped reading it, is when this certain girl is introduced in the story. So once she's introduced, once I see where she's at, then I'll know, more or less, how much of it I actually read, if I'd read this whole first volume or not. Well, the equivalent, of this first omnibus. Because so far, man, I've read that much, and I definitely read well past this, Well, at least that, well past that, given that that character hasn't been introduced yet. But it's cool, to kind of be brought back in a sense to it, and to be reminded of the world, and kind of remember more or less these different things that have happened, and be reintroduced to certain characters, and following Yuri on her journey to essentially try to get to, she saw this helicopter whirl by at one point, and it's on a certain building, but it's a really far away building, and she figures if she can get to the helicopter, she can escape the roofs and basically find her way to freedom. But there are going to be a lot of obstacles between her and being able to escape this world. And at one point she starts to kind of see, why that woman who jumped, when she first enters this world, why she jumped. She starts to see kind of it starts to make sense to her, why she would do that. If you spend enough time up there, and who knows how long that lady had been up there, to where she hit her breaking point, that that made more sense than to just keep going and keep dealing with the insanity of what's going on this rooftop. And she runs into other human characters, and it's one of those stories where anytime your lead character that you're following through a story runs into other human beings, something's probably going to happen. Something's probably going to happen to those other human beings. They're going to suffer some horrible fate, and that's typically what happens in High-Rise Invasion. Anytime Yuri runs into other human beings, something horrible is about to happen to them. And I thought that was kind of funny, because that's a trope in a lot of things too. The Walking Dead is the same thing. Anytime your core, group of survivors in The Walking Dead runs into a person or another group of people, that person or that group of people is probably going to die by the end of the episode. And it's kind of the same thing with High-Rise Invasion. Anytime Yuri runs into people, I'm just yeah, they're going to die. It's only a matter of when. It might not be the same chapter, but in maybe 2 or 3 chapters, they're going to die. I like the story a lot. I know the anime got a lot of flack because I guess it was kind of, I don't know what they were saying about it, but it was trash or whatever. But given that I have a history with this story, I really like it. And I like that it drops you into this world, and it gives you the exposition as it goes. And you learn about Yuri as the story goes. She tells you about her brother as she goes. She's talking to herself. It's not a fourth wall break or anything. She's not talking to you, the audience. She's just, talking to herself, and talks about her brother and talks about her life. And, little by little, you start to get pieces of this world. And then I think other characters kind of talk about the world as well. So the exposition is presented to me in a natural way, where you're basically dropped into this world, and it just kind of goes straight into it. It doesn't waste any time. There isn't like a 20-page thing at a karaoke bar. It just gets right into it. And one thing I do like is you get a little bit of, what's going on with the masks and how the masks, kind of play into the world. I don't know how much of that I should say, because I don't want to ruin your experience with this story, because I know I've talked a little bit about the different aspects of it. So maybe I shouldn't say too much about the masks themselves. But what I will say is there is a certain level of control that goes on with certain characters in this story and the actions that they take. And they are influenced, in a sense, by the world to do things they might not have done, and then like just like a regular life situation. The world itself kind of influences people's actions, like where you might be like a regular person being up here, it might distort your view of reality and start twisting you around, I guess, if you will. So yeah, that's something that I really like the series a lot. I'm not gonna lie to you, dude. I guess you could maybe consider this a guilty pleasure on my part. Maybe somebody reading it now, in this climate where there's so much manga. Even if you look around this room, there's a ton of manga here. This might not, appeal to a lot of people. But for me, that I read this in a time where, like, I really didn't have a lot of access to much manga, and a lot of stuff wasn't really available in English yet, other than, reading it on, like, scan sites or whatever. I loved it. I loved reading this, and even now, going back, I've just instantly fell in love with it. I don't know if other people feel the same way, or, given, like I said, there's so much stuff now that, like, there might not be much of an audience for it now. It might be seen as dated. So that's another thing too, is like I could definitely see this, being considered dated, given that it came out like forever ago, and maybe an audience now might not want to read something like this. I definitely enjoyed it. I love, stories that feel like, how the hell are we gonna get out of this? Like it's kind of like a no-win situation. The only way out is by essentially jumping from the rooftops. Yeah, I have a deep personal love for this thing, and I'm not gonna lie to you. I could definitely see maybe certain people nowadays not, being too in love with it. But yeah, I mean, I definitely enjoyed it, and I couldn't wait to talk about it in this video. I'd love to know what you think about it if you've read it, or maybe you plan on picking it up now that I've talked about it. But yeah, let's keep this train unrolling. So next up, we've got Alice in Borderland. This is probably one of my favorite of these that I've read, and this one's actually really good. This story is incredible. I started reading it before I went up to Michigan. I had to go to Michigan for a work thing, and I took it with me, and I kind of read it, in the airport, waiting for my flight to Michigan. And then while in my hotel room in Michigan, I finished it. And then I was like, damn, dude, I should have brought more. I should have brought the second volume, because I was thinking about bringing the second volume with me too. But I was like, nah, I don't think, maybe I won't finish it. And I ended up knocking it out because I could not put this volume down. I tried to watch the live action version of Alice in Borderland. Oh, and by the way, this is by Haro Aso, and this dude also has done two other series that I know of. One of them is called Zom 100, which I'm sure you all know, and then the other one is Hide and Closer, which I don't know if a lot of people know about or not. I think it had like an 8-volume run. I have Hide and Closer somewhere in this room. I don't know where exactly it's at, but I do own it, and I meant to read it forever ago for a video, and I just never did. But yeah, it's the same creator. He did Alice in Borderland, Hide and Closer, and Zom 100, which also has an anime. But yeah, Alice in Borderland has an anime, and it has the live-action TV series that is on Netflix. I tried to watch the live-action show, but given how this plays out, I just can't watch it, because I don't like that it doesn't really follow this too much. Which, I mean, at the same time, that's kind of cool, because like it goes its own way, it kind of tells its own, I guess, sort of a story. But given how this plays out, given how the manga plays out, dude, I think the manga is absolutely incredible. I love the characters in this story. They're all so much fun, and like they're so distinct, I guess if you will. So we got this dude right here named Arisu, and then there's another dude named Chota, and then there's a dude named Karube, and then at some point they end up meeting with this woman named I think like Shibuki. So pretty much this is an interesting story to try to like give you the setup for. I've had this for a while. I've had these volumes for a while. I picked these up forever ago, and like I just never read them because I wanted to read them for this video, but I got the other like 3 through 4 over there on the shelf, or 2 through 4 over there on the shelf. But yeah, I picked the series up forever ago, and then just never read it until like now. I kind of wanted to save it, much like Kaiji. And I don't know if you all remember me just going on and on about Kaiji, how I'm saving it for this Death Game manga video. And now that it's finally happened, I was able to read all these series that I've been hoarding for the longest time. But I want to set up Alice in Borderland a little bit, and so pretty much it follows Arisu and Chota as they go to Karube's bar, and Karube's like I think 2 or 3 years older than these two dudes, and they go out on the town to try to meet girls, and at some point in time, I guess they give up on trying to meet girls because it's like too far from where they are to going to like I think Shibuya, or I forgot where the hell they were going. They were going somewhere, I think like some seedy part of town or whatever, where there's like girls that are I guess like women of the night, I guess if you will, and they end up giving up their pursuit to go meet these women of the night, and at some point in time there's like at some point in time there was like fireworks or whatever. But then the fireworks are getting closer and closer and closer and closer to where like it completely consumes these dudes, and they wake up at some point in time in Karube's bar, but it's like a lot of times passed or whatever, and they don't realize this, but they've essentially woken up in this world called like Borderland, I think Borderland, and it kind of plays up, like you'll see right here, I kind of think it kind of has it, like it's got like the spades or whatever right there. It's kind of like checkered in the sense where like it gives an Alice in Wonderland kind of a thing, even the title obviously, Alice in Borderland. And that is definitely an aspect of the story, is Alice in Wonderland, where they are essentially in like this bizarro sort of a world, and there are essentially like races against time, like there's timed trials or whatever. You have a certain amount of time to do the thing, like the different challenges or whatever. You have a certain amount of time to do the challenges, but you also have to do the challenges correctly. Otherwise you will die. If you don't do the challenges correctly, you die. If you don't do it in time, you die. So it's pretty much like you have to do everything perfectly and be able to escape. But they don't realize, that they've essentially woken up in this this Borderland world until they meet Shibuki, and she kind of gives them the rundown, of what they've, essentially gotten themselves into. I like her a lot. I like these characters a lot. I like the 3 guys. They kind of like gel. I didn't like Chota at first. I thought he was kind of a loser, but as it kind of goes on, he's just like a dork. He's just like this dude who's like, he's innocent. You know what I mean? He does, like, at first to me, I thought he was a creep, but then he kind of just revealed himself to just be kind of like a dork. Shibuki I really like, and I like that she has kind of like lore for this Borderland world where she knows, because she's been in the world before them, but basically you're like a tourist or whatever in Borderland, and you have a visa, and to extend your stay in Borderland, to extend the time on your visa, you have to participate in death games, and there will be like a set time at a set place where you have to go, you have to be there to participate in the death game. And if you survive the night, if you survive the death game, depending on the difficulty of that death game, you will get extra time, extra days or whatever put on your visa, which will allow you to keep living in Borderland. And you can't escape it, as far as I know. Like, none of these people can come and go from Borderland. Once you're in Borderland, you're in Borderland until you die. at one point in time, like we see, as readers, we see what happens when people's visas expire. And the best way that I can describe it is, if you've ever read Gantz or seen the anime for Gantz or whatever, the way that if you step out of bounds or whatever of the place where you're like supposed to hunt the aliens, if you step out of bounds, this I don't know, something from like the heavens or whatever explodes your head, and that's kind of the same thing. And that's kind of the same thing with Alice in Borderland. If your visa expires, like a beam will fall from the sky and it will kill you. And at one point in time, you see a bunch of people, I don't even know, like 100 or so people's visas all expire simultaneously. And you just see beams like all over like this, I don't know, Tokyo, I guess, this like dystopian sort of Tokyo that Borderland, kind of resides in. You see this beam take out like a whole heap of people. And to continue to exist in this world, you need to continue to participate in death games so that your visa does not expire. But yeah, I was pretty much hooked. Once it got going, and we meet Shibuki, and like I said, she's got a lot of lore like that she knows about this world, and it's all stuff that she learned either through her own experiences, in Borderland trying to survive, or through people that she met up with, much like these dudes, entered the world together. When she first started, there was like an original group of people that she had started at the same time as, and now of that original group of people, I think it was like 5 or 6 or something people that she'd started the game with, she's the only survivor. Like all those people are gone. And she kind of tells this group of dudes, these 3 dudes, like Arisu, Chota, and Karube, that like sooner or later their friendships will be tested or whatever. And Borderland is essentially like a really cruel place, and it will essentially try to tear them apart. And she kind of warns them about this. She says that it will do everything in its power to essentially like hurt them. And one of the earlier games that they participate in just kind of shows, in my opinion, just how unfair this world can be. It's like playing Dark Souls, like playing a Dark Souls game, like playing a FromSoft game. Where it's like if you don't know the mechanics of it, it's like super duper unfair. And then once you actually get really good at it, it's like a masterpiece. You consider it like one of the best things you've ever played. But Borderland is like a much more unfair version of that, where no matter what you do, the game is just trying its damnedest to kill you. And one of the first games they participate in is like right when they meet Shibuki, and they have to answer questions, and for every question they get wrong, a flaming arrow is shot at them. And at one point in time, I don't want to say too much because I don't want to like ruin your experience with the story, but let's just say that like they get a question wrong that is like a lot of arrows, and it's bananas, man. Like some of that right there is what hooked me when that scene happened. That just hooked me, man. Like it was incredible. And basically the rest of it after that, and seeing how these characters use their wits to try to survive. And Arisu kind of reminds me of Summertime Rendering. There's a character in Summertime Rendering who, I forgot what his name was, but he's like a really smart sort of a dude, and he has this thing called, he has like this sort of mindset, called, like, God, I forgot what it was. It was like Eagle Eye or something. I think it was something like Eagle Eye or whatever. I'll put whatever he calls it down here. He tries to see ahead of what's going to happen, and it's definitely something that's going to be really valuable for his own survival and for the sake of trying to keep his friends alive, even though, like Shibuki had told him at one point that this world is super cruel, and it will do everything in its power to crush him and crush his friends' spirits and whatnot. And on top of that, they have to continue to play death games. So this world really is just out to absolutely kill these characters no matter what. And it's so oppressive, but at the same time, it's so well done. It's one of those series that, like, makes you want to keep reading because you've fallen in love with these characters and you want to see what's going to happen next and how they're going to be tested next. And I think it's well done. If I had to, even though, like, I haven't talked about the last one yet, I'm going to be honest with you all, I think this right here is the winner of everything that I'm going to talk about. But let me talk about the last one too, because I have a lot I want to say about Kaiji. But if I was going to recommend you all anything, I would definitely say, for the love of God, read Alice in Borderland. This thing is as close to a masterpiece in death game manga, or just manga in general, just storytelling in general. Yeah, I love this first volume, and I cannot wait to read volume 2. Let us talk about a classic. This is Kaiji, Gambling Apocalypse. Kaiji, and this is by Nobuyuki Fukumoto. Nobuyuki Fukumoto. This same creator has another manga that's going to be published in English, I think either this year or next year, and I'll put a picture of it over yonder. And this is a manga that I did not know existed until I'd seen the TV show Squid Game. And yeah, so I watched Squid Game and I loved it. I thought Squid Game was an incredible series. And then it wasn't until, like, you know, I'd seen YouTubers or whatever talk about Kaiji and saying that it basically ripped off Kaiji. Because there's also an anime for Kaiji. And I really didn't know anything about it until I saw that, you know, YouTubers talking about, you know, Kaiji and whatever. And I started seeing the parallels, you know, of how similar a lot of things in Squid Game are to Kaiji. And even reading it myself, I'm halfway through it. Almost halfway through it. Reading it myself, you know, and seeing kind of like the parallels, I can see, you know, I want to say maybe influence. I don't know if that creator in any way, shape, or form was actually influenced by this, or if it's just a big coincidence. I'm not here to cast stones. I don't know. I still, you know, I mean, I haven't seen any interviews with the creator or the dude who wrote it or whatever, so I don't know if such is the case or not. But I will say that it is pretty similar. But one way in which they are not similar is that in Squid Game, that pretty much, like, right off the bat throws you into the madness. I'm sure most of you have probably already seen Squid Game, so you know exactly what I'm talking about. That series goes like 0 to 100 really quick, whereas this, I'm like halfway through it and really nothing has happened yet. And that's something that I wanted to touch upon with Kaiji, is that, like, well, I was giving Doubt, you know, a lot of grief about being kind of slow for like 20-ish pages or whatever, or maybe more than that, you know, while they're in the karaoke bar. Kaiji, like, for the most part, like, not much has happened. I'm like halfway through it and not really much has happened. This is, for the most part, I've accepted, you know, that this is like a slow burn sort of a manga. It might not be for everybody. Like, if you are a person that like likes just hype, you know, action, fights, whatever types of manga or stories or whatever, you're probably not going to like this, because this is really slow. I feel like the same people that didn't like Tokyo these days, you know, because it was too slow, may not like Kaiji because it's kind of the same thing. It's not story-wise the same thing, you know, because they're two different sorts of mediums, but it is slow as all hell. But I've enjoyed it because, like, I like the building of the tension, even though it's like a really slow building of tension. But it does remind me of Squid Game, where I can see, you know, how it's believed that Squid Game took from Kaiji, in that basically this dude is a dirtball, and then the lead character in Squid Game is also a dirtball, and this dude steals the hood ornaments off of Beamers and just basically collects them. And then, like, he keys up this dude's car, and then the guy whose car he keyed up is a member of the Yakuza. And he ends up getting basically... So what ends up happening is that this dude signs or uses... In Japan, they have, like, stamps. And everybody has, like, their own, like, personal stamp or whatever. And, like, he uses his stamp to help this dude out or whatever, get him out of like a loan that he's in, or take out a loan. I forgot what it was exactly that the situation is, but yeah, basically he uses his stamp to help out this dude, just trying to be a good guy or whatever, and the dude ends up screwing him, and he screws him for like 3 million yen or something like that, and now the Yakuza has come to collect, and it seems like the dude who he was helping out, who Kaiji was trying to help out, it seems like that dude has skipped town. So now Kaiji owes the Yakuza like 3 million yen. And he has no money, so there's like no way for him to essentially pay off this insane debt that this other dude has incurred. And now has fallen into his lap. So the guy suggests, like, oh, I know of this ship where you can basically earn that money that you owe us, and of course there's going to be interest, and I forgot what the interest is, or if it adds up to 3 million, with the interest or whatever. But he's given this option to board this boat, and he says, oh, in one night you can make, like, I forgot what he said, how much money he could make in one night. I think it's like 6 million or something like that. You could make that in one night and pay off your debt to us, and then still, basically sit pretty, like have enough money that you can, take care of yourself or whatever. But he leaves out, that there's something a little more nefarious going on in this cruise, and he essentially like plays him for a chump, and Kaiji, for the most part, gets played for a chump multiple times throughout this volume. Yeah, from what I've read, he does get played for a chump multiple times, and it's just kind of like, dude, what are you doing? I've talked about Uncut Gems a bunch on this channel, and that's like this is another one that reminds me of like Uncut Gems, where it's just like you just make like the worst gambling mistakes, like just one after another, just bad decision after bad decision after bad decision, and that's kind of like what Kaiji does. And yeah, so this Yakuza dude comes to his apartment and basically like, gives him the rundown of like, you owe us this money and we're going to collect, one way or another. So he says, like, he makes it seem like there aren't any seats, like many seats available on this cruise ship, where like they're going to be playing different games or whatever, and basically you can come out with a certain amount of money. And he says, like, you only have this much time to give me an answer about whether or not you want to, get on this cruise ship or not. And then supposedly he gets a phone call, and the call tells him that, the seats are up. There aren't any more seats. Like, too bad, Kaiji, you had your opportunity. All the seats are gone. So now you have to find another way to make up this money that you owe us. And Kaiji's like, come on, man, you gotta give me another opportunity. Let me get on the boat. I want to get on the boat so that I can pay you back the money that I owe you. And the guy's like, I don't know. I don't think it's possible. Like, you're out of luck. So he ends up. He's like, let me call him back. Let me call him back, and I'll try to get you a seat on the boat. So he like acts like he's gonna call this dude back and talks to him or whatever. And he's like, guess what? A seat just opened up. They're gonna let one more person on. And then once Kaiji leaves or whatever, this dude comes out of the other room, and he's like, how was that, boss, or whatever, pretty much saying like he was the dude on the other line. And yeah, they kind of, there's kind of like a little ominous thing there where he's like, little does he know, what's gonna happen on that cruise. So like pretty much fast forward, we're on the cruise ship, and there is this dude who comes out of just a random door and kind of like gives an explanation of the rules of the games that they're going to be playing or whatever. And everybody has like 3 stars on their chest, on their lapel or whatever. And if you lose all 3 stars, you basically forfeit and you are kicked off the boat. But as long as you have at least 1 star by the end of the first game, I think you are allowed to. No, I'm sorry. You have to have 3 stars by the end of the first game. Yeah, you can't have anything less than 3 stars. You start the game with 3 stars. You have to have 3 stars by the end of it. So as long as you have 1 star, you can do whatever it takes to get your last 2 stars back. And there's this whole thing with money where like they give everybody money that wants it. If you're over like a certain age, I think it's like if you're over 25 or over 30, they'll give you up to like 3 or 5 million yen. But if you're under, I guess, a certain age, they'll give you like 10 million yen. And so Kaiji, being younger, takes the 10 million yen, and you are thrown into like these different sorts of games or whatever. But at the beginning, it's all one game, and I think it's on the cover here. Yeah, so pretty much you're playing like rock, paper, scissors. That's the first game that they play in this first part. So as they're doing this rock, paper, scissors thing, he teams up with this dude, and the dude he teams up with, it's so obvious that this guy is going to turn on him, and Kaiji just kind of like goes along with it. And this is one of those times where he just falls for this thing and believes this dude and trusts this dude, and the dude screws him. And I won't get into that because I don't want to, like I said, I don't want to start ruining too much of the story for you as the reader. But it makes a series of bad decisions to the point where it's like, how the hell are you going to get out of this? And there's like, I think so far, like 6 or something of these really thick volumes. So there's a ton of this story, and I can see, this one game of rock, paper, scissors probably being this whole first volume. Given that, like, we've gotten that far so far, and it's still in that first game, and there's a lot of, like, walking around, like Kaiji does a lot of walking around, and then, like, he makes alliances with other players that are also down to, like, their last star or, like, the last couple of cards. Pretty much, it's like, I think if you run out of cards, you're kind of screwed, but if you have at least, if you run out of, at least if you have like a star, you could buy stars from somebody that has like 4 or more stars. They might be willing to part with their stars later on in the game because you only need 3. So you could, sell your star. You could buy stars from somebody for like millions of yen or whatever. And given that he's got 10 million yen, he can, for the most part, buy 2 stars from somebody. But they may not want to sell their stars until the game is almost over, because that's when, people start to get desperate and things start to get a little more tense and whatnot. There is like a lot of exposition that's kind of dumped onto these players and onto you as the reader. It's just kind of like happens like boom, 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 boom. Like there's a ton of text that, goes into explaining, what's going on. And like, it makes sense, because like it has to explain itself. The world has to give you what's going on for you and the participants of this game to essentially get, what they're getting themselves into. Or it's too late now, they're on the boat, so they have to play rock, paper, scissors or whatever. And I think it's really good. It's definitely kept my interest, and I just kind of like stopped halfway because this is the last thing I read. Everything else that I had to read for the video, I'd already gotten through, and then this was the last one. And I figured, I kind of figured like, I don't think that there's much more that's going to happen from here to here. I feel like it's probably all going to be just, Kaiji going back and forth with different people trying to get 2 more stars. So I kind of figured that was a good point to stop it, and I had enough anyway to kind of set this world up for you as a potential reader. Or maybe if we've already read the series, way more than what I do. But I was just kind of like going into like a surface, kind of thing about it. And the money that these characters, receive has like a crazy interest. So you'll end up owing a ton of money on the money that you borrowed. I think it accrues interest like every 30 minutes or so. Like the money accrues interest. I forgot what it was. It was like something crazy, like 30% interest or something every 30 minutes. So it's just like, it's insane, dude. And like, it's a really interesting look at, I don't know if I want to say capitalism or what, but just basically like high stakes sort of gambling or whatever. And these dudes who are already, living these really, these like life on the outskirts sort of lives, they're dirtbags and whatnot, and they're just the societal outcasts and whatnot. And there's this film that came out like a long time ago. I don't know. I want to say like, I think like mid 2000s, called 13th Samedi, and it's like a jumble of different languages. It's like German, I think Polish, and I don't know. There's like a bunch of different languages that are spoken in this film, and it's this movie that was a recommendation from a friend of mine a long time ago. And basically there's these dudes who go into a room, and there is a light bulb in the middle of the room, and there's like 13 dudes that stand in a circle, and each of them has basically like a revolver or whatever, and they get one bullet, they put it in the chamber, they spin the chamber, they slap the gun shut, and they each point the gun at the dude in front of them. And when the light goes off, all 13 dudes pull the triggers of their pistols, and basically whoever's left standing at the end of that round, you pretty much just go round for round until I guess there's only like 2 dudes or 1 dude or whatever. And yeah, basically like, you'll just keep going until there's like one dude left, and then that one dude will win like this crazy pot of money. And that's a really wild film. I don't know if any of you have ever seen it or have any desire to see it, but yeah, it's one of the wildest movies that I've personally ever seen, and definitely one of the most interesting artistic liberties I've seen in a film, where it's just so wild. And it got remade in English. I think Jason Statham, if I'm not mistaken, I think he stars in it. Him and like Ray Winston, I think that's what that dude's name is also in it. And there's like a bunch of just random characters. I think Mickey Rourke is also in it, if I'm not mistaken, in the remake. But the original 13 Samedi was super gritty, and the way that it was shot, it's just so, I don't know, so well done, to the point where like it feels real, even though it's, it's obviously a movie, it's fake, but it feels so well done. It's like Man Bites Dog, where like there's this film crew following around this serial killer, and like it feels so legit, and he's going about his like business or whatever, and he's like talking to this film crew. It's surreal, and like he's talking to this film crew about like being a serial killer. But it's so wild, and that's kind of like what 13 Samedi also kind of makes me think of, because they're both in like black and white. Alright, so now for the final part of this video, where I go down the line and say if I would recommend something or not. Deadman Wonderland, I would definitely recommend if you like edgy mid-2000s sorts of manga, a lot of gore, and I wouldn't say too much gore yet, but there will be like more gore later. Death Game manga, definitely edgy. I really like the characters. I love the artwork. I like her design right there, Shido. You'll get more of it as it goes on. You'll start to see more of the different characters and the situations that end up happening. Or like I said, there'll end up being like fights, between the inmates. That's where like the real attraction of this sort of a story kind of takes place. And then we got Doubt. I don't know if I would 100% recommend this to anybody. I guess if you maybe grew up in this era, like you're a fan of this sort of artwork, because this definitely has like that mid-2000s sort of an artwork, where like Clannad kind of has the same sort of artwork. I've been reading Robotics Notes, and that also kind of has like super similar artwork. A lot of these stories that came out in like the mid-2000s have a lot of like that, kind of like that similar artwork. But I don't think you're going to miss anything if you don't read Doubt. I feel like there's plenty of other stories that maybe might be well worth your time, that will be a lot more interesting to read. But I mean, if you want to check it out, or if you've already read it and you like it, I think that's cool. Next we got High Rise Invasion. This one I definitely recommend if you like just fun, kind of random, stories, like kind of like a Death Game story. Lead girl Yuri has to adapt to this world and basically become a killer herself to fight against these masked beings, and as well as the other people on the world that start to go crazy because the world makes people go bananas. And yeah, like I said, I have a soft spot for it because of the fact that I read it so long ago and I'd already known about it. If I read it now from scratch, I might have a different opinion about it. But given that I read it when I did, I really like it a lot. It's super fun. It's super like, I don't know, it's definitely kind of gory. You see these people go bananas, and I like that. I like stories where like things feel hopeless, but this character finds a way to kind of survive. Alice in Borderland, as I said before, this is probably my favorite of the lot, and hands down the one that I'm going to recommend you, not just because of Death Game manga, but because it is just flat out a really good story. So I definitely recommend this one if you want a really solidly written story, and something that it feels like it's probably going to get really depressing later, depending on like the trajectory that it ends up ultimately taking. And then we got Kaiji. This one I will recommend to people that just want a tension builder. That's definitely what this story is, in my opinion. It's like a tension builder, but it's a tension builder that's done well. You're not going to see like any blood and violence and gore and stuff. Not yet. I feel like it definitely happens, because I feel like for a fact that it definitely does happen, but it's probably not going to happen for a real long time. Like I said, I'm halfway through it, and we really haven't seen any of that yet. I don't think we're going to maybe see any of it. Maybe not even this chapter, or maybe towards the end of this volume. Not chapter, this volume. We'll end up seeing some stuff. That's all I got for you all. These are the if I don't drop them. These are the volumes of manga right here. If you read any of these or all of these, I would love to know what you think about any one of these series. If you plan on picking any of them up, please let me know which one you plan on picking up, if any of them. And yeah, well, I've been wanting to drop this video for a while. It feels good that I finally got to knock it out. I know this got really long. I didn't mean for it to get this long, but unfortunately sometimes things happen. And that's all I got for you. If you enjoy what I'm doing here and you want to support this channel, you can do so by heading over to Patreon and joining my Patreon for $2 a month. I give you updates on what I got working. I do behind the scenes videos. I do outtakes from whenever I mess up or whatever, like things that don't end up making the final cuts of these videos, because I cut them up to make them as neat as possible, and I end up cutting a lot of stuff out, and sometimes I'll leave in my mistakes or whatever in bloopers that I end up sharing on the Patreon. And I want to start trying to do more stuff on the Patreon as well. So if you want to support this channel and you want to see what other stuff I got going on, that's a great way to do so. You can also drop a super thanks underneath this video. That would also mean the world to me. You don't have to do either of those things if you don't want to, but it would definitely mean the world. That's all I got for you. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I hope you're all doing well. I hope everyone that you love is also doing well. Until next time that we meet.
Yo, it's himself, the Shadowrunners clique, aka Sleep Allah. Take you on a mental and live for one day, y'all. Sheets, y'all. Guns, y'all. Yo, who got the guns? You got the coke. Hustling them through like big punch cholesterol before he croak. Rest in peace, but I bless in peace and live to one day lean shoots. Rap over beats and tell wild stories, the mythology mystery. Choke on your own misery, fuck them, we're the wild bunch. Yo, I asked him if this bike could punch. This shit made me lose my lunch. Bro grabbed the rocket, I said chill before he cocked it.